This
so that
conference
everyone
will
will
now be recorded.
Right, great. So yeah, we're recording so we can send all of you the recording and the PowerPoint. So welcome to MediaGrowth Accelerator. We're really excited that you can come, and we're really happy to be able to have Kevin Arshman, who's going to be speaking on how you can sell more to a media agency. As we prepare for the selling season, it's really important to be able to sell more to the agencies. Kevin has spoken before at other events, and he's done a great job. So I asked him to come back. So I want to thank MediaCom. MediaCom has been a great sponsor for us over a year, and they do a really good job for the B2B media community. MediaCom, over the last decade, MediaCom has helped thousands of brands increase sales and productivities by deploying easy-to-use ad sales, production, delivery, and billing software. Publishers minimize costs and maximize efficiency with MediaCom's industry-specific solution. Contact a MediaCom expert by emailing info@mediacom.com or visiting mediacom.com. So we're really happy to have MediaCom sponsors, and thank you very much. So now I want to introduce Kevin Arshman. He is a partner of B2B Media Specialist at MediaCom, has been in the media business for 30 years, strategically managing B2B media investments for multinational companies, including GE, Siemens, Dell, FedEx, Lockheed Martin, and Shell. He is a recipient of 6 different industry awards nominations in B2B marketing. He is the former chair of the 4A's B2B Media Committee and currently serves on BPA's executive committee. He is also the creator of the video series Peer-to-Peer in B2B Media. So I'm going to turn this over to Kevin, and thank you so much for Kevin for presenting. I know we're all going to learn a lot. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. It's so great to be part of this again. We did this a while back, and it's just for me and always a privilege to be speaking directly to publishers and helping them really get on the radar screen at the media agency. And I hope everybody is healthy and well. Just to tell you a little bit more about where I work, but I want to tell you also what you're going to get out of today. I'm really going to talk about the greatness that you guys bring to clients. Some of you are probably new, cutting edge with the latest and greatest with interactive and engagement in your content, ways to attract readers, to attract online users, or you're a legacy. You've been publishing since the 1960s, and you have all the news that's fit to print and to put online. But unfortunately, we still have an issue because you still don't always make the cut, right? You don't always get on the media channel mix recommendation. So today I'm really going to talk about how we can solve that issue. And through that, and how do I do that? It's really to give you sort of an understanding of what it's like for us at a media agency, how you can get noticed, and some best practices. And to tell you a little bit about the place I work, and I came to this first, I'm sorry. I wanted to really give you something, a little gift to inspire everybody who's in the business of selling. I always think it's important to read something or watch something, whether it's a video clip, before you go on a sales pitch or before you do any task that is challenging and you need courage to prepare yourself. I like to watch a clipping of the Apollo 11 launch, to watch those men walk the plank before they get into the space capsule is very, very inspiring. Or watching a clipping of any entertainer before they're walking on stage to give a concert or a comedy routine, what have you. And that's a picture to your right of the Beatles at Shea Stadium. So a little something extra for you guys. And again, as I mentioned, I wanted to talk a little bit about where I work. And I'm part of, or MediaCom is part of Group M, which makes up 3 of the top media agencies across the globe. And we collaborate with our parent company, WPP, which enables us to bring a multitude of creative agencies and resources in finding unique ways to connect our clients with customers and bring them value and profit. We are an agency that's very unique in the fact that it's driven by its culture and diversity and social impact, and especially technology. We are about people inside and out. And you can see to the bottom there how many employees we have in the US. We're located in 5 cities in the US, and we're also in 100 countries, 125 locations. So again, we're a full service agency offering consumer and B2B. And we've also started building a new division, which is called MediaCom for Business, which is really focusing on the B2B needs of our current and future customers. And this is, Kathy had mentioned the series that I created, which is called Peer-to-Peer. And I thought there needed to be a very unique way through video to have a one-on-one sort of like fireside chat session with publishers. So what I did is I set up a camera, invited publishers to come to our agency for us to sit down and have a conversation about the latest trends and in this case in B2B marketing. And that's just some snapshots of a few of the people that I've met. And hopefully we'll continue this series as we all get back to the office. And it's available that you can look this up on YouTube, and you could be able to see it in more detail. So the first thing I want to really talk about, and really getting into the kind of in the dynamics of things, is what we need from you as a publisher to really drive growth and savings. And these are some examples to the left. We look at a lift in word of mouth. We look at a lift in purchase intent. Are we increasing revenue for our clients? Is there obviously an increase in awareness, and what is that percentage? And we measure that. As we put media out there, we're going to survey customers pre and post or during, a campaign to see how the needle is moving. So these are things just to keep in mind. You should say, what is that agency really looking for? What is their overall, indicator of success? And these are just some examples. Now, there are 3 things that have always come to my mind when I define the power of a publisher, especially in business-to-business media. And what you offer to advertisers. What you offer is a deep dive into the industry field. I mean, you have reporters working 24/7 that are covering a particular industry. And because of that, you've created an environment where you can help our clients drive the discussions that are taking place, what the hot topics are, what the milestones are. And that helps our clients be perceived as a real business partner and a solution to what's going on in the industry. You're also a very trusted resource. Your audience actively provides information about themselves, whether they're filling out a qualification card or a survey that you provide them, but they are filling that information out, and it's getting funneled down to information that's digestible for media planners and buyers to know more about who's reading your publication, who they are by job title and industry, and I'll get into that in a little more detail, or who's going on to your website, or who's subscribing to your newsletter. And when I mentioned job title and industry, the second point is we do set a bar. We want to see at least 85% of your audience being qualified by a title, by an industry, at least within 12 months. And what's also great about trade sites is that, or a direct publishing site in the B2B space is that it's less susceptible to fake news, as the content is typically restricted to the industry. As I mentioned, you have reporters, guest editors writing, 24/7 about what's going on in the industry. And the agency, a media agency or a creative agency, should really work directly with publishers. That is key. What I mean is not working with you through a trading desk or through programmatic, two areas that are very important for media, don't get me wrong, but there's a time and a place where we should be working directly with you and doing our buys directly with you to help with the overall strategy and getting to be part of that overall channel mix that we're recommending. The third thing, what I found very interesting, is that many sites really climb to the top of a Google search. So if I typed in, and this is just an example, control engineer, the Google results are going to reveal engineering.com on top of the results. So I thought that's very interesting. And that happens a lot with many of the publications that I might go to Google to look up, or a job title or a job function. When I type that in, your publishing title is top of the list. That's a key thing. And here I wanted to point out some kudos to everybody. Some of the things that I've found in the news about how well publishers are, making their mark. And you can see some things that kind of stick out that, for example, 72% of retailers put new products on their shelves as a result of seeing them first in industry magazines. I mean, how great is that? Targeting beyond broader general business media like, Bloomberg, it increased by 77%. There are roughly, or estimated, about over 2,400 trade magazines with accompanying trade sites. And typically you'll find about 480,000 ad pages purchased in a year. And I put there trade publishers, the focus is on, which we're going to talk, this came from recently from eMarketer. When I spoke to them and gave them some insights, we put together a updated report on B2B marketing, came out in July. And in there, you'll find this quote, that the focus for trade publishers is on custom sponsorships and contextual native formats alongside highly relevant editorial content. And that is key, because that is a driving growth or a trend that we're seeing. And I'm going to talk about that or visualize that for you in the next few slides. So kudos to everybody on the publishing side. You guys are making headline news. And I'm seeing, since the last time I did this webinar, that things are changing. I'm seeing clients wanting to do things directly with publishers as part of a multiple channel media mix. And these are some of the touch points that are on the rise, that when we work with a client and the decision has been made that trade is going to be part of the channel mix, these are some of the kind of strategic tactics that are eventually activated or amplified. And one area is the infographic, then the e-blast, which is a custom e-blast, and then the native series or the custom articles. And print still very important because of its tangible nature. And you can see a percentage of this was based on looking at engineers across many industries and what they use as a main source of information. And you can see that's pretty high, from 76 all the way to 79%. Now I'm going to talk more about this because one of the things that I wanted to tell you about is that with infographics, I call that sort of like the hook. It's a way to hook the customer or the reader in, and gives advertisers a way to illustrate industry issues and solutions. And I think it's very important as a publisher to, it's either the advertiser is going to provide that infographic, or they may rely on you for those creative services. So it's important to have your own creative services that you can provide if an advertiser decides to do an infographic and they don't have the resources, but they can rely on you to do the creation. And then for eBlast, I call that the conversation starter. Provides initial or new business insights. And then with the article native series, this is all about giving the advertiser the opportunity to own the conversation. But it really starts with a collaboration with you as the publisher to work together and create articles that are going to tackle the industry issues and provide business solutions. And the end result, or what we see from this, and we usually do this with a kickoff meeting, a roundtable discussion between you or a guest editor and the client to talk about industry issues and concerns, and formatting it in a way that it becomes headline news, a headline and body copy, 500 or 600 words, and it becomes a series that's based on that collaboration and the conversations you've had with the advertiser, and you spread it out, through the campaign period. Maybe you run an article 3 weeks in October, and then in November you run a different article for another 3 weeks. That's just an example. And print, very interesting. I still feel print is it's probably the most tangible, multi-dimensional way to tackle an industry solution and talk about a solution. You can see there, if you can see in this thumbnail, that this is what the creative or the content did. It was talking about, on one side, on the left, it was actually talking about issues in the industry, and then on the right, in that column of that copy, it was talking about the client products that were solutions to those industry issues. And another thing I came up with I thought was interesting is maybe doing this like a color wheel. If you ever seen a color wheel that artists use, where they could mix and match colors on the wheel to, for example, red and green. If you put red with green, it'll show you that it'll make brown. But why not do something like that for products? So as you turn the wheel, you match products with different issues or what have you, and you polybag that in the magazine. Again, something very tangible and dimensional that the customers can hold in their hand and use as a reference. Another very important thing is, this is part of what I just mentioned, is doing this article development and promotions. And by promotions, I mean trying to amplify it while you're running this headline and article, or in the visual, as you can see there on your website on the home page. You also find a way to amplify it in social media, or drive awareness to it, drive usage through newsletters and other, different tactics that you might have. And why clients like this is because it's giving them a good amount of space in the editorial well. They're embedded into that well to look like they're part of your content. And because it's kind of this collaboration between you and the advertiser, and in this case Shell, there's a lot of credibility added to it. And this article also then links to downloadable information that could have could be gated content for lead gen. And we did this for Shell Energy, and in a very, very short amount of time, in just 4 months, along with a custom webinar, doing this delivered 1,200 leads, which surpassed their original goal of just trying to get 500 leads. And this is another way of looking at it, kind of giving you a sort of like a landscape or a 30,000 foot view. The whole idea and some of the things that we do when we are talking with clients is, we want to have the information that's on a client's website jump off of that website into a trade publication, for example, where that becomes the headline in the news article. And as you can see, it leads to the guides that I'd mentioned before, an e-news letter, maybe a direct or custom e-blast that is sent, and then having that also on your LinkedIn post. So again, this kind of shows how it all sort of kind of works and flows together. It's all about connecting these things to lead to thought leadership, tackling an industry issue with a solution, and awareness and leads at the same time. Now I want to get into our next topic and kind of describing for you a typical day at the agency. And success, I believe, really comes from the collaboration we do with publishers, whether it's on a baseline tactical level and just includes banners and sponsoring newsletters, or a custom e-blast, or something more, engaging, as I mentioned before, or more custom thought driven, such as the article series. And what's also important is that I've seen through the years that planners at the agencies develop a lot of their skills with publishers. And those skills are not just related to media, they're related to business skills, good work ethics, and great creative ideas. Another thing I want to talk about is kind of how we do it differently at MediaCom. And what's very important is, as I mentioned before, having you guys help our clients own a topic, own that industry issue, and to be able to have some conversation around that. And we meet with you about those topics. And it also leads to building an awareness of unanticipated needs and issues or solutions that your readers may not have thought of, or what's coming down the pipe. Inventing media is also important, going beyond, what publishing companies offer, and inventing tools that are really necessary for clients to build value, partnerships that are of high value. And then organizing multiple operating units into one cohesive network. What I mean by this is a typical day at the agency is streamlining multi-complex businesses with many stakeholders, many units and products, services, goals, you name it, into a workflow that is going to be very efficient, consistent, and standardized. This is the basic steps to building a media plan, which I wanted to add to this whole, to this conversation about a typical day at the agency. And what we start off as we kick off conversations with clients, about campaigns, we put together what we call a media brief. And that's where we discuss objectives, goals, key performance indicators, how things are going to be measured. And a lot of things from the media brief are going to be discussed with you as we approach you as a possibility of being part of the channel mix. And then what we do is, once we have that brief and we understand also the target audience, is that we apply a lot of data tools to do a lot of cross-tabbing. And we use these tools that are mentioned here. And it's defining the audience further by size or demographics, behaviors, and media usage. And I always like to share this with publishers, because publishers have to understand that a typical day at the agency is also like working at a science lab. It's like NASA. We're deep involved in looking at data before we have that one-on-one conversation with you. And once we are doing cross-tabbing and we know like a specific audience and what media they use or what media they value, then that leads to creating what we feel is the optimal channel mix. Okay, and then from that channel mix, then begins the RFP process. Now we start engaging you in conversation, whether it's going to be through an RFP that's going to really visualize or highlight the key tactics that we want to use. If it's a kind of what I call the baseline approach, if it's a combination of banner, e-news, or e-blasts or webinars, or if it's going to be something more in depth and more related to an overall thought leadership plan, like the custom, the article series that I mentioned before. And then we go back into our lab and we start creating the media plan. And then from there, orders are processed and measurement comes next, and looking at, well, those banners are being viewed and if we need to make changes along the way. This is just kind of what you call a workflow. And you should understand what happens on a daily basis at the agency from a workflow perspective. And as I mentioned, with the research and through, looking at ourselves as sort of like this science lab or a NASA space center, we're constantly keeping our eye on the media through a lot of research tools. And I put them into these categories. And cross-tabbing, as I mentioned before, it helps us build up personas and collect behavioral data. We also may look at just overall research and articles that are out there about media, and then really getting to our planning tools. Pathmatics is for competitive spending in digital media. I'm going to talk a little bit about BPA, because we still look at audits, and SimilarWeb is a very interesting tool where we can compare your monthly unique online audience with another website in the category. So I mentioned BPA. So BPA really is the resource behind behind overall auditing. And we'll still look at the BPA statement, what we used to call the green sheets, because it ensures that a specific job title or industry is reached. And you can see on top, I wonder if you could see my cursor, but right here, when we look at an audit, and this is from just pulled this from a publication, these are job titles. And it's very interesting because a lot of questions I get asked by clients when recommending a publication or website is how much of the audience is a CEO, or how much of the audience is a owner or a partner, how much is in middle management. So this type of auditing helps. And if you're not audited, you really have to make sure that you have this type of information readily available for the media agency. And then across here, you can see the business and industries that they're in. And all this gets reported to a client or advertiser, because it breaks down really the composition of what they're investing in. And I mentioned before, trying to get, being qualified. Here you have a 73 qualification. But again, this is a little bit on the weak side, because we would want to see this at 85. But what's good about this, as another thing to look at, is that 96% of the audience have directly requested to receive the publication, as opposed to getting it because they're part of a company or they're a part of an association. And we take all this information and we do graph it for our clients, as you see here to the left. So another interesting tool that we look at is through audience data. We look at lists of potential buyers when they're in market. We look at their intentions. We take that audience and then we even drive it further by looking at lookalikes. We create what we call like heat maps on leading industries. So for example, that we might go in and look at a company by its certain size, or a CEO that's within a certain company by number of employees, or their profit level, and then finding where they reside in industries. And so this is a heat map as an example, where this would tell me that construction, healthcare, and retail are very important industries for a certain kind of broader definition of a business executive, where he or she is in the kind of company type or company industry. And that leads to direct partnership, because I'll take this heat map and discuss it with the client or the planning team and say, look, this is showing that we should be in construction. We should be working directly with construction publishers. But this also can lead to other, channels as well, which we're going to discuss momentarily. And the RFP process. Okay, this is, I mentioned this before, and this is typically, there's kind of two ways about approaching a publisher. We either do it with a standardized format that you see here, where it has everything we need to know about recommending banner display, or recommending an e-newsletter, or recommending a custom e-blast. We understand that this is probably in your media kit, but 9 out of 10 times, we're not going to pull it from a media kit. We're going to have you fill this in and populate this type of chart, more of kind of a plug and play process, because it also becomes sort of an understanding or a document between two parties, between the publisher and the agency. And it allows us to say, hey, we have it in writing on what the costs are. It gives you the opportunity to consider putting negotiated costs, because we want the best cost possible. Typically, we don't want to use the same costs that are published in a media kit. We want to have some value. We want to see some discounts, and that's where this kind of format comes in. It's standardized. It allows for better agency control and provides everything we need, from the traditional to a little bit of out of the box. And then the other way of doing it is through packaging, okay, where we may come to you with we want to see a package at a certain amount of money, and then we would give you guidelines. For example, if it's going to be an article series, then maybe we start with that and go from article series to promotions to amplification, as an example. And I think it's very important also to really think like a planner. Okay, and what I mean by that is, I notice sometimes when I call or when I email a rep from a publication or website, 9 out of 10 times in that conversation, that rep leaves out things regarding circulation, regarding impressions, regarding available dates and closing dates, what materials are needed. They don't really cover, on the phone or an email, everything that's needed from A to Z. And I think it's very important to think like a planner when you're having a conversation with the agency. to know that they're going to ask questions about the audience, and even if you're talking to them about a newsletter, okay, let's just use the most simplest but important tactic, a newsletter that you have. You need to describe, or share how many people are receiving that newsletter, when are materials due, what's the material unit, things of that nature. Sometimes it doesn't even come out in conversation. And it needs to. It needs to be a really good dialogue back and forth. You should anticipate the questions we're going to ask and have those answers readily available before we ask them. And that's just, some proactive advice, some encouragement to really help get, closer on the radar screen. And one thing I wanted to mention is that, what you see here, the banner display, the e-newsletter, the custom e-blast, as I mentioned before, I call that sort of the baseline, approach. It's a little more linear, but then we want to evolve from that if that's the case, and then get into conversations about more deeper thought leadership opportunities, engaging opportunities. And it's not just an article series. It could be creating an event, creating a roundtable discussion, creating research that we help underwrite. So some best practices, and I'm going to just kind of visualize some of the interesting things to do that we would like to see happen in the future, is getting even further embedded into the editorial well. Maybe being part of your called the masthead or your portals. Here's just an example where we could have a portal that is sponsored by the advertiser on a very, very important topic. Another idea, and I mentioned before about inventing media, is that's something we want to do, and that's what makes our job, that's what makes us grow as media planners, and maybe as publishers as well, is that we're creating unique or something very new for our customers. And this is just an example called Relocate App. And I wrote a description of this, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read this to you. But what we found in business is that there's a constant challenge to leadership, which is either downsizing by relocation or building new facilities in different locations. So Relocate App really solves that challenge. It contains information in any location, any geographical location related to infrastructure, and that could be IT, that could be the talent pool, that could be legislation that's happening in that market. Anything that is important to gauge the area to see if it's conducive to expansion. And the interface, as you can see to your right, really kind of appears like a scientific periodical table. And we thought that this is a great way to make it very interesting and unique. And it could also allow email alerts from the advertiser or downloadable assets. Okay, so you can see this is something you're not typically going to see in a media kit, and this goes beyond the article and all the other different tactics I mentioned. And what's behind this, what engineers the information, is the data that you gather as a resource. Now I want to talk, and I'm sure this is on everybody's mind, is the media kit. What's the right way to do a media kit? What's the wrong way to do it? Should we be printing our media kit? Should we be digitizing it? Most important is that what I need to get across is what is needed in that media kit. And what's needed is some of the basics. Is you can see here the visualization of your audience. Now, I talked about an audit statement, and yes, audit statements are preferred. There are some companies that will not buy advertising unless they see an audit statement. If you don't have an audit statement, the best you can do is at least have from a reader survey information on job titles and, you know, job industries or the job function and the primary operation of your audience, and visualize that right away. So when I'm on your website and I go either click about your website or I go to Media Kit or advertising information, this should pop up. And I should know how many people come to the site that are unique and on a monthly basis. And you can see that number there at the 147,000. Also, the editorial calendar is important because let's say we're just doing a digital buy, not a print buy. It's still important to know what your site, what your publication is going to be talking about in a particular month. So these are very important items to have. Another way of doing it, you can see how everything is visualized, and you can see there's an audit statement as well. This is a way not to do it, and I see this a lot, is to not even provide anything except asking me my name and my email, my subject, and you'll get back to me later. Or even say, give us this information and you can easily download the Media Kit. Even though I prefer it be done the other way, that it's there, it's open, we have open access to your Media Kit. Because planning, even though I mentioned sometimes we feel like we're in a science lab, a lot of things are done on the fly, a lot of the analysis is done in real time. Avoid asking a buyer to complete a form fill, to download a kit. And please do not give out general contact numbers or emails. It doesn't help. It delays the process. It delays the entire planning and buying process to get something to a client, or to even start with a consideration. Okay. So what agencies do, I want to describe what we're tasked with and what we would like for you to provide as a recap. So we need to know your audience up front. We need to take inventory of the editorial. From that editorial calendar, we need to know who to contact, and download a PDF of the entire Media Kit would be great. And so to make this happen, you provide a number and a percentage of the audience that's qualified to receive within the year, a number and percent by job title and industry, and some of the things I've mentioned that are really in that audit statement, the unique monthly visitors, and also I think, because a lot of this we talked about all these points, but here's an interesting point I wanted to get across. Talk about either having it online, or as soon as you have a conversation with a media planner or buyer, how is your title different in the category? You know, what really sets you apart from the others? Now, that could be from a content perspective, from a reporting perspective, the way you engage the audience. It's not so much in all the tactics that you have or the multiple channels to get to your audience, is how you stick out among the rest. And as an agency planner or buyer, we're really looking at, this is really important, and this is what when I have the opportunity to train planners and buyers, I explain that you should look at every section as much as you can of a website that you're considering. Not just leave it to the client to look at it as well, but you should look at all the portals, what the drop menus are, look at the news, look at the depth of the news that's being reported, look at the quality and the quantity of features. Are there any kind of practical applications or real tangible videos or visuals that are great for the audience to be consumed by? And what resources are offered? Because your resources could really help with the rationale when we recommend your site. We say, well, this is a great site. It's unique in the category because of A, B, and C, and look at the resources that they're offering to the publisher. I'm sorry, to the online user. And it's important to get notice. It's important to make sure you're listed in standard rates and data service, because this is sort of the key encyclopedia or directory where we can find sites by industry. It's important to be audited by BPA. It's important to show up in SimilarWeb and also in Telmar through Kantar, or any of the sources we might use in Telmar. So I really wanted to thank you. I hope you found this encouraging. Again, my goal is always to help you get on the radar. I like to see more investment directly with publishers. And again, I think we'll always continue this conversation, and I hope I have the opportunity to maybe talk to you individually, or have a chance to talk to you guys as a group again in the future.
Thank you, Kevin. That was an excellent presentation. We really appreciate it. And thanks again to MediaCom for sponsoring us. So go ahead and put your questions in chat, and we'll answer as many questions as we have time for. So first, I just want to mention, everybody's excited to be back in person, and MediaGrowth Summit will be in person October 5th to 6th. Great networking and great way to be able to hear some excellent speakers. We're going to be sharing some good insights with us. So I have some questions for Kevin. And what challenges do you face working in media, Kevin?
Well, sometimes you face I think the cart before the horse situation, or in some situations that can mean planning before budget becomes available, or creative comes first before budget. Just to name a few. I think another challenge is inventory, especially with the challenge of planning quarter by quarter. Media space and trade sells very, very fast. So if we can plan, or we have the opportunity to plan, do a 6-month plan and then continue on, and extend that helps us with taking care of that sort of inventory issue that often happens. And some of our clients definitely plan that way, and some don't, but inventory, I think, is always a challenge, and something being available and then there's a missing part, which I mean by the cart before the horse.
Okay, thank you. What other media channels or programs are typically used to complement going direct?
Well, definitely account-based marketing, search, events. One of the things I like, if you can still see my screen, I think this is an important thing to show. This is something that really can complement going direct, which is the whole strategy behind account-based marketing and using programmatic. But this is also not only complements it, but also can be very competitive to a direct publisher, because dollars or budgets or efforts could shift from publisher to doing something more on the ABM or programmatic side. And I think it's important for me to show this so everybody kind of has kind of the top line sense of how it works, where we would look at first party data from our advertiser, our client, and look at how things are being purchased, looking at their site visits, looking at the accounts that they're currently attracting. And then we would take that information and really onboard it into looking at company domains. We're doing segmentation now, and we are able to get more insights into the propensity of these current customers, and getting more expanding those customers through firmographics or technographics. And as that segmentation continues, because we're trying to, again, expand what is a current client base to a more new evolving client base, we then look at, we're getting a great understanding of accounts that are in market, because of the lookalikes we've seen, the personas, the search behaviors, the way they're, the different information that they're digesting. And again, what's happening is all these company domains, these potential audiences are being onboarded into sort of a programmatic or ABM opportunity, and then we activate. And what we've done is we've seen surging accounts and we've seen accounts that we can re-engage. And so this is something that should complement a direct buy and is part of the channel. And you're also going to have your search, and you're going to have other social media, and you're going to have events. But again, everything beyond that, or everything else I'm mentioning could be considered a direct competitor or taking away share from a direct publisher.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy,
Go
can I
ahead.
chime in?
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Sorry,
Yes,
I
sure.
have to leave in 2 minutes, and I was hoping to ask a question before I have to run.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
So I'm just curious, do you consider the type of audience, type might be the wrong word, but when you're looking at the different trade publications, do you consider if the audience is a subscription, like a subscriber audience versus a sort of a free registered audience? Versus not registered at all? Like, do you look at those as a spectrum versus anybody can come visit and read content versus anybody can come visit and read content for free if they register versus if they're paying?
We really look at both. I mean, we try to define the audience in any possible way. So whatever the publisher, and by the way, your voice is very familiar. I might be able to guess who you are, but it's at a later
It's
time.
Dan Fink, who's head of Money Media. Yeah.
So it's however you can bring it to the table, and however you do it, that's what's important. We're gonna actually look at it the way you have it. And does one take precedence over the other? Obviously, we like to see the subscribers who have opted in, who have elected to receive the content. I think that's obviously important. But sometimes what might balance the scale or tip the scale is if you do have a larger pool from people who didn't register or opt in, but they are continuously, coming to the site. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, yeah, it answers the question. We have a lot of subscriber audiences, and we see very high levels of engagement. I think sometimes we struggle with how to communicate to agencies that the people on our site are paying to access it, and the engagement level is very high. But yeah, I think it's just hard to communicate that sometimes. It feels like a bit of a volume game.
No, I mean, you should come out with that, because that should be certainly a high ranking, rationale. And what I do is I try to say, or the client will ask, these are people, are these people paying for this, or are they opting in, or is it just flowing out there and it's wherever it's sticking, it works. So, definitely what you're saying is the pay, that's very important, or people willing to get it, not because they are, it's falling on their desk, or it's available to them in their inbox because they're part of an association, but it's something they really need. It does, the media works. I mean, look, I believe in the site, in the publication already, because it's covering that. If it's a good site and it's covering that industry and it's really reporting on everything that is important for buyers, then that's 90%, that's half of the battle. And then it's, that audience, and then hopefully then you look at the next thing. It is that audience how much are they willing to give information? How much are they willing to pay for this information? You know, and then that comes in line as well. All sort of kind of mixes into this, or funnels down into this kind of consideration or recommendation.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. That's helpful. I do have to run for a new meeting, but thanks for your great presentation, Kevin. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, glad you could come, Dan. So we are at 12 o'clock, and so we really need to wrap up to respect everybody's time. So thanks again, Kevin, for your presentation. It was really excellent. I know we all learned a lot. So everybody have a good, yeah, it's great. So good. So it was really good. And, everybody have a good day. And we're glad that things are looking better in the media industry. And Kevin shared a lot of information that I'm sure we can all be useful to us. So we'll see you in September. I'll be emailing you the speaker for September. Have a good day. Bye-bye, everybody. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye. Yeah.